I didn't ask for a promotion. I didn't demand a corner office or a company car. I asked for a 5% raise after 4 years of overtime, skipped vacations, and being the go-to on every crisis. 5%. That's all it took for my boss to laugh in my face. His laugh echoed in my head as I sat frozen across from him. My hands were clenched under the table. I had rehearsed my pitch all weekend, brought printed reports showing how I'd boosted revenue by 22% across 5 major accounts. I wore my best navy blazer, brought my calmest smile. None of it mattered. A raise. Brent scoffed, leaning back like he was watching a sitcom. Adriana, if you want more money, maybe you should go find another job. He chuckled like he'd just delivered the punchline of the century. 5%, he repeated, shaking his head. I smiled politely. Thank you for your time, I said quietly. I gathered my papers with steady fingers, but something broke inside. Not my pride. That had eroded long ago. No, something deeper. A final crack in a structure I'd held together too long. My name is Adriana Blake. I'm 41, Senior Account Manager at Whitmore & Klein Advertising in Charleston, South Carolina. And until that meeting, I thought I was indispensable. I never missed a deadline, took the worst clients and made them stay, worked weekends without being asked. I'd only asked for a raise once. I returned to my desk, not even a private one, just a corner station by the printer, and stared at my cold coffee. Another last-minute campaign had landed in my inbox. Because Adriana gets things done. That's what they always said, like it was a compliment. Before I go on, I want to ask you something. Have you ever been in a situation like this, where your loyalty felt one-sided? Leave a comment below. And if you've ever stayed too long at a place that didn't value you, hit that like button. It helps this story reach someone who needs it, because what happened next might help them find their own voice. That night, I stayed late. Again, I was staying late. Finishing a campaign Darren had forgotten one I'd saved more than once. When I finally left the office, it was just past 8:45 p.m. The parking lot was nearly dark. 3 cars as always, mine, the janitorial crew's, and Brent's. I sat in my car engine, off, staring through the windshield at the same office windows I'd looked through for 4 years. So much time spent proving I belonged. As if belonging required self-sacrifice. Then I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I opened LinkedIn. A red notification blinked in the message icon. I tapped it. Adriana, if you're ever open to a conversation, we'd love to chat. Your work with Halden Biopharma didn't go unnoticed. It was from Sarah McIntyre, VP of Strategy at Alden & Knox, our biggest competitor. The message was 2 months old. I stared at it for a full minute, my finger trembling above the reply button. Brent's voice echoed. If you want more money, get a job elsewhere. So I responded. Hi, Sarah. Thank you for reaching out. If the invitation still stands, I'd be happy to speak with you. Her reply came 5 minutes later. Let's talk tomorrow. I'll call you at noon. I sat back in my seat, heart racing. I hadn't quit. I hadn't stormed out. I just answered a door someone else had opened. The next morning, I arrived at 8:10. Brent strolled in at 10:07 with a coffee and a smug grin. Still here, Adriana thought you'd be packing up. I smiled. Got a full day ahead. He didn't know I had a call that would change everything in 2 hours. At 11:59, I stepped into the empty break room, closed the door, sat at the small table beside the fridge. At exactly noon, my phone rang. Adriana, this is Sarah. Her voice was warm, steady, the kind of voice that commands trust without effort. I straightened in my chair, almost instinctively. Hi, Sarah, I said. And just like that, the next chapter began with one call, one offer, and one man too blind to see my worth. Thank you for calling, I said. I've followed your work since the Halden campaign, Sarah replied. That campaign changed everything. The behavioral segmentation, the conversion metrics. It was surgical. I blinked. Brent had taken all the credit for that project. At the client presentation, he didn't even mention my name. But I had done the market analysis, built the strategy, designed the A/B testing logic until the numbers held. The client only knew his face. "Thank you," I said carefully. "Let me get straight to it," Sarah continued. "We want you at Alden and Knox. You're not just talented, you're underutilized." That last word cut deeper than I expected. "I know what that feels like," she added quietly. I paused. "What's the role senior campaign strategist?" "You lead your own team. Salary is 35% higher than your current base, plus bonuses, profit sharing, full creative authority. We don't micromanage talent here." I inhaled slowly. "That's generous." "It's fair," she replied, no hesitation. "Fair for what you bring to the table. I've already cleared it with HR. The role is yours if you want it, but I need your answer within 24 hours. I was stunned. No interviews, no drawn-out negotiations. They already knew my worth, something Brent never even bothered to discover. "I'll call you tomorrow," I said. "Thank you." After the call, I didn't move for several minutes. Just sat there staring at the break room fridge humming softly beside me. Somewhere down the hallway, Brent was probably making jokes about entitled staff again. At 12:30, I returned to my desk and found another task waiting in my inbox. "Can you clean this up? You're the only one I trust with it." Brent's words. Trust me to clean up messes, but not to lead. Not to grow. That night, I called my mom. She used to work nights at a corner pharmacy while raising me. When I told her about the offer, she asked, "You're not seriously thinking of staying, are you?" I hesitated. "I've been at Whitmore and Klein for years." She was quiet. Then she said, "Wrong is giving your soul to someone who only sees your output. It just feels wrong to leave," I said quietly. Mom's voice stayed gentle. "Wrong is giving your time, your soul to people who treat you like a tool. You didn't leave Adriana. They pushed you." I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about all the ways I'd shrunk myself to fit into a company that never made space for me. All the birthdays I'd missed, the weekends I'd worked past midnight just to prove I was worth something. At 6:30 the next morning, I brewed coffee and sent one simple message, "Sarah, I'm in. Let me know the next steps." Her reply was almost immediate. "Welcome to the team. We'll send the official offer and onboarding packet by noon." I just stared at the screen. Welcome to the team. And if this story made you feel seen, even just a little, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because the next chapter, it might just be the one you've been waiting for. No one had said those words to me with meaning since my first day at Whitmore and Klein. Even then, it was muttered by a receptionist who couldn't find my badge. But this time, it meant something. At 9:00 a.m., I walked into the office like any normal day. I greeted the receptionist, sat at my desk, smiled at the people who never noticed when I stayed late or skipped lunch. But something inside me had shifted. By 10:30, the offer letter was in my inbox. The numbers made my breath catch. Salary, benefits, a title I had earned 100 times over. I printed it, folded it, slipped it into my bag. At 11:00, I knocked on Brent's door. "Got a minute?" He smirked. "Back for round 2. More raise negotiations." "Not quite," I said, and handed him the letter. His grin faded fast. His eyes scanned the header. "Alden and Knox. Offer of employment." "You're kidding," he said. "I'm not, but they're our biggest competitor." "Yes," I said calmly. "You told me if I wanted more money, I should find another job. So I did." He stood abruptly. "This is betrayal. After everything I've done for you." I met his stare. "Everything you've done to me, Brent. There's a difference." I looked Brent in the eye. "Everything you've done to me, you mean." Then I smiled, the kind of smile that says I'm finally done explaining myself. "Don't worry, Brent," I added. "Tomorrow will be my last day, and I'll make sure the transition is unforgettable." I arrived at the office an hour early, not to make a statement, not for theatrics. I just wanted one last walk through the quiet space before the buzz began, before the hallway chatter, the passive-aggressive compliments, the performative team spirit. I had spent over 200 days in that building, some filled with real pride, but most drained by burnout, late nights, and invisible contributions. Today, though, I felt light. By the time Brent arrived at 9:57 a.m., latte in hand, I had already cleaned out my space. I packed my favorite mug, my planner, the little fern I watered each Monday. The framed photo of my niece, the one I missed her recital, to finalize a proposal. He didn't look at me as he passed. Didn't say, "Good morning." But I saw the stiffness in his shoulders, the weight of it all. At 10:30, I sent my company-wide handover email. Calm, clear, professional, organized links, detailed notes, a brief sign-off. Today is my last day. It's been a journey. Wishing everyone the best moving forward. Adriana, by 10:45, my inbox lit up. From Julian in finance, wait, you're leaving. What happened? From Kevin in client success, they're going to fall apart without you. From Elise in creative, tell me where you're going so I can follow. I didn't respond. Not yet. At 11:00, Brent called me into his office again. Adriana, he began, voice forced calm. I've been thinking. I said nothing, just waited. Maybe we acted too quickly yesterday. I shouldn't have laughed. That was unprofessional. It took everything in me not to smirk. I spoke with HR. We can offer you a 7% raise, retroactive to January. He looked almost proud. It's a good offer. Shows how much we value you. You value me now that I've got one foot out the door? I folded my hands calmly. I appreciate the gesture, Brent, but I've already accepted another offer. He frowned. That doesn't have to be final. You haven't left yet. We can match whatever they're offering. I leaned forward slightly. Can you match a team that respects me? A manager who gives credit where it's due. A culture that promotes based on results, not politics. He didn't answer. I'm not just leaving for more money, I said softly. I'm leaving because I was invisible here. Until I became a threat. Brent exhaled sharply. If you go, Adriana, you're burning bridges. No, I said, rising from my chair. You lit the match the day you laughed at me for asking to be valued. I left his office without another word. At noon, my phone buzzed. Just confirming you're still good to start Monday. It was Sarah. Absolutely, I typed back. Let me know what to prep over the weekend. Another buzz followed. Actually, check your email. Thought you'd want to see this. I opened my inbox. It was a forwarded thread emails between Brent and a major client, Valence Biologics. I had managed their account for almost a year. The VP wrote, "We're disappointed to learn Adriana is leaving. She was the reason we stayed with Whitmore and Klein. Please advise who will be managing our account moving forward. We're reconsidering our contract." I stared at the message, heart racing. Attached was the original email sent directly to Brent. I forwarded it to my personal account and clicked Save. At 3:00 p.m., HR called me in. The standard paperwork exit checklist, confidentiality form, final paycheck agreement. Then came the twist. We'd like you to sign this non-compete, the rep said, sliding over one more page. I blinked, then actually laughed for the first time all week. This wasn't in my original contract. We're asking employees to sign going forward, she replied. Just a formality. I pushed the paper back. I'm leaving, I said, not dying. And I'm not signing away my right to work. They looked stunned, as if the quiet woman who always nodded politely and stayed late had suddenly grown a spine they hadn't noticed. At 4:15, I walked to Brent's office one last time. Dropped off the company phone. My badge. He didn't say a word. Didn't even look up. But I felt the panic radiating off him like heat. At 4:23 p.m., I walked out of Whitmore and Klein for the final time. No farewell, no thank you. Just the silence that comes when power shifts. Tomorrow, Brent would be the one fielding client calls, dealing with transition failures, answering questions he couldn't begin to solve. And I wouldn't be there to clean up the mess. Instead, I'd be stepping into Alden and Knox with my name on the door. My work finally recognized, and my value no longer questioned. That I realized was worth more than any raise. On Monday morning at 8:30 a.m., I walked into the glass and wood headquarters of Alden and Knox. Sunlight spilled through tall windows. Laughter and typing filled the air. On my desk sat a welcome packet, my name printed clean across the top. "Welcome to the team," Adriana, the front desk assistant, had said, handing me a warm coffee. You're going to love it here. And I already did. My new office wasn't big, no skyline view or fancy chairs, but it had a door, a window, and peace. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged. Before I even logged into my email, I saw it. Subject Valence Biologics Terminates Whitmore and Klein contract. I clicked. The leaked memo was clear. Due to the loss of key personnel, we're reevaluating all commitments. My name wasn't in it. It didn't need to be. Sarah walked in as I finished reading. I take it you've seen the news? I nodded slowly. That was fast. She smiled, lifting her phone. Turns out when you're the glue, everything cracks when you walk away. I smiled back, but only halfway. They'll blame me. They'll try, she said. But the truth is, Sarah said they let you go long before you walked out that door. She was right. That morning, I met my new team at Alden & Knox, 3 sharp campaign strategists. One intern named Lexi and a data scientist who reminded me of myself 5 years ago, bright, cautious, constantly second-guessing her voice. You don't have to prove anything here, I told her as we reviewed her first draft. If you've got ideas, bring them. She blinked, even if they're different from yours. Especially if they are, I said. By 2 almost p.m., my inbox was swamped with alerts, news articles, LinkedIn messages, a flood of quiet updates from people still inside Whitmore and Klein. From Elise Brent's in full panic mode. Valence pulled out. From Kevin now TechVantage is threatening to walk too. From Julian emergency meeting just called. You should have seen his face. I stared at the screen for a long time. It wasn't satisfaction I felt, it was clarity. This was never about revenge. This was about what happens when leadership builds its entire identity on people it refuses to see until they leave. I didn't have time to dwell. At 3:15, I was called into a leadership meeting with Sarah and the executive team. Adriana, the COO, said Valence has requested you personally oversee the transition. They want consistency, confidence, and you. I blinked. I'd be honored. Just like that, I became the face of a $4.2 million contract. By Tuesday, Whitmore and Klein was in free fall. Campaigns paused, clients reconsidered, exit clauses activated. I watched it unfold, not with joy, but with the quiet understanding that this was always coming. Because loyalty is earned, not owed. That afternoon, I got a message from Julian HR just announced layoffs, starting with account support. Everyone's blaming you, Adriana. I stared at the message longer than I expected. Typed, deleted, typed again, then finally sent, I'm sorry they're going through that, but I didn't cause this. They did when they decided their people didn't matter. I leaned back in my chair, eyes open, heart steady. I sat in my office that evening, overwhelmed by a strange mix of pride and guilt. Pride in my decision, and guilt for the people left behind in the wreckage. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept drifting to Lexi, to Elise and Kevin, to the coworkers I used to share lunches with at that sticky break room table, while Brent sat in steakhouse boardrooms, taking credit for work he didn't do. And I thought about the cost of speaking up, of walking away. It hadn't just been mine. The next morning, Sarah knocked on my door. Got a minute? She asked, settling into the chair across from me. We're expecting more resumes from Whitmore and Klein. People looking for somewhere to land, I figured I said. I'd like you to help us review them, she continued, especially for the Valence team. You know who the strong ones are, who deserves a second shot. Something shifted in me. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about rebuilding something better. I'd be honored, I said. As she stood to leave, Sarah paused at the door. Oh, Brent reached out. I blinked. What used our website's contact form, asked for a meeting, said he'd like to consult, share insights about client retention. I let out a short laugh. What did you say? I told him we already have all the insight we need, she said. Her name is Adriana. 3 weeks into my role at Alden & Knox, I stood at the head of the Valence strategy team. I was presenting ROI graphs that made even the most skeptical executives lean forward. Every key metric had improved since the transition client satisfaction on-time delivery campaign reach. My team delivered. Not out of fear, but because they were heard, respected, trusted. And for the first time in my career, I was the one leading the room, not quietly, not behind the scenes, but as the name on the report, the face in the pitch. Recognition felt unfamiliar, like stepping into a version of myself I'd only imagined. But while I rose, Whitmore and Klein kept crumbling. Layoffs had now reached middle management. Word spread quickly. Bioplex and Marintech had both pulled their contracts. Nearly half of Whitmore and Klein's staff had been laid off. The rest were operating under a cloud of fear and uncertainty. And still, my name was being whispered in hallways I no longer walked. One afternoon, I received an email from Elise. She had always been the quietly brilliant designer who made everything shine, yet never got the credit. Adriana, they cut my whole team yesterday. I don't know what I'm going to do. I've never worked anywhere else. I just wanted you to know I'm not mad. You did what we all wish we had the courage to do. That one hit harder than I expected. I forwarded her portfolio to Sarah. Within 2 days, Elise was interviewing with our design director. But it didn't stop there. Over the next week, I began compiling a list. A quiet list of people I had worked beside. People who stayed late, fixed what others broke, helped teammates even when they weren't recognized. Julie, Kevin, Marcia from QA, Antonio in IT. I remembered who actually kept the place running while Brent played executive. It became a mission of sorts. Every evening, I combed LinkedIn. During lunch breaks, I opened old Slack threads and reviewed past client notes. One by one, I tried to reach out. Not everyone was ready. Some never responded. A few wrote back kindly saying they weren't ready to revisit the past. But one message stayed with me. It was from Patrice, the former head of accounting. You got your promotion by watching the house burn. Don't pretend you're a hero now. I saved it in a folder labeled The Cost, because that's exactly what it was, the cost of rising in a system designed to suppress. A week later, Sarah and I presented the Talent Recovery Initiative to the board. A formal proposal hire displaced Whitmore and Klein employees, prioritize the overlooked, provide training referral bonuses and consulting roles for those transitioning careers. One board member raised a concern. Are you sure this is wise? Some may carry baggage. Sarah replied before I could. They were never the problem, she said. They were the solution their leadership failed to see. That's how Sarah closed the presentation. The board approved our Talent Recovery Initiative unanimously. By the end of that month, 14 former Whitmore and Klein employees had joined us at Alden and Knox. Elise was promoted within 2 weeks. Antonio rebuilt our internal comm systems in record time. Kevin created a feedback framework that cut client response times by 30%. And the culture, stronger, quieter, more human. One morning, as I walked into the lobby, I spotted a familiar figure seated near reception. He looked like a ghost of himself, thinner, pale, clutching a weathered briefcase and a forced smile. He stood as I approached. Adriana, he said, voice tight. I'm not here to cause trouble. What are you here for? I asked, stopping a few feet away. They say you're hiring former Whitmore people, he said. I need work. I've got a mortgage. Kids in college. He swallowed. You know how this industry works. Once your name's attached to failure, his voice trailed off. I didn't respond at first, just looked at him. I'm not in charge of executive hiring, I said eventually. I'll take anything he rushed, consulting, training, even an admin role. This was Brent, the man who once told me I was replaceable. Now asking for a lifeline. You said I was burning bridges, I reminded him. He looked down. Turns out, I was the one holding the matches. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. I simply told him I'd pass along his resume. As I walked away, something settled in my chest. I didn't need to destroy him to win. He did that himself. All I did was stop proving myself to people who never truly saw me. 6 months had passed since I walked out of Brent's office for the last time. Since then, Whitmore and Klein had lost 4 major clients, laid off over 60% of their staff, and withdrawn from 2 national campaigns. There were whispers now about mergers, about liquidation. I didn't feel joy or guilt, just clarity. watching the house fall in on itself, knowing I tried to fix it and no one listened. I had a team now, a team that asked for my input, not my silence. A boss who credited my ideas in meetings. The workload was still heavy, but it no longer felt thankless. And for the first time in years, I was sleeping through the night. Not because I had less responsibility, but because I wasn't carrying the weight of being invisible anymore. One morning, I arrived early before the building buzzed with footsteps and polite chatter. I liked those quiet hours. They reminded me of all those mornings at Whitmore and Klein when I was the first one in and no one noticed. But now, I noticed, and it made all the difference. I made a cup of coffee, opened my inbox, and reviewed a campaign brief from Lexi, one of our junior strategists. It was sharp, creative. Her voice was clear in every line. I made a note to tell her, no edits. Just well done. Before closing the file, I noticed something in her email footer. Mentored by Adriana Blake. I froze. It was the kind of acknowledgement I used to wish for. Long ago. At 11:00 a.m., Elise stopped by my office. They offered me the lead designer role, she said wide-eyed. I smiled. Of course they did. I'm not sure I'm ready. You've been ready, I said. You're just not used to being seen. She nodded a little wistful. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if you hadn't left. So do I said. But you did, she added, and it made space for the rest of us to believe we could too. That afternoon, I reviewed another stack of resumes from former Whitmore and Klein staff. I didn't have to. I could have passed it off. But I wanted to. Because I remembered their faces, their late nights, the way we all held up a system that never supported us. Not everyone made it out. Some vanished from LinkedIn, some changed fields. A few like Patrice never responded. But I kept their names in a folder not out of obligation, but because I understood the cost of staying. At 4:00 p.m., HR pinged me Brent Wilkins. Application. I stared at the screen. No note. Just a name I knew too well, and a resume full of half-truths. I didn't open it. Just clicked mark as read and closed the tab. There was nothing left to say. The truth was, Brent had already taught me the most important lesson of my career, not by mentoring me, but by underestimating me. And I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. That night, as I packed up to head home, I glanced at the framed copy of my original offer letter, the one from Whitmore and Klein. I'd kept it tucked away in my drawer, a silent reminder of how little they thought I was worth. Beside it now sat a small handwritten card from Lexi, given to me on my first day as her mentor. Thank you for making space for people like me. I hope I make you proud. She already had. As I turned off the lights in my office, I thought back to that day. The way Brent laughed, loud, dismissive, his smirk, his shrug, and the sentence that had changed everything. If you want more money, get a job elsewhere. Those words pushed me out of one life and into another, a better one I built with quiet resolve, difficult choices, and a growing understanding that value is not determined by a title, a manager, or a company name. It's something you define for yourself. The real raise. It wasn't in my paycheck, though. That certainly changed too. It was in the respect I finally received, the peace I earned, the future I created one decision at a time, and the deep, unshakable knowledge that no one, no outdated boss, no cold system could ever take that away again. If you've made it this far, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever been in a place where you gave everything, your time, your talent, your heart, and still felt invisible? Drop a comment below. Tell me what moment made you realize you deserved better. Because I know I'm not the only one who's ever been underestimated, overlooked, or told to be grateful for crumbs. And if something in this story reminded you of your own journey, please say so. Not just for me, but for someone else scrolling through these comments, wondering if they're crazy for wanting more. Here's what I've learned. You don't need to be loud to be powerful. You don't need to burn it all down to walk away. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply stop shrinking. Stop apologizing. Stop waiting to be seen and start building the version of your life that actually sees you. So hit that like button. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment. Let's build a thread of voices that say we're done being overlooked. And if you haven't already, subscribe, because this isn't the last story like this, and you deserve to hear every one of them.